Hey everybody, welcome back to our news roundup. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Hope you guys are enjoying the little thing that I put out. Would love to hear your thoughts on it if you guys check it out. I will be doing a video tomorrow kind of detailing a little bit of the process that went into doing it. Basically another filming stories video, so hopefully you guys will tune in for that tomorrow. If not, it's perfectly fine. But yeah, so we are back now with another news roundup. We're going to be having a lot of content planned out for this week. So yeah. So without further ado, let's just cut this intro and just dive right on in. So coming off the weekend, we have the newest release in the form of Ballerina, the latest in the John Wick series, the first of the spin-offs that they're doing. It has officially opened worldwide, I believe, now, yeah, in like foreign nations and other places. It's had a worldwide release, and needless to say, the opening for such film was underwhelming, to say the least. It's open to a global debut of $51 million, which, looking at its expenses, production was at least $90 million, and the marketing cost, according to Deadline, were at least $45 million, so half of the production cost. And keep in mind also the production expenses were due to reshoots and additional photography that took place in the wake of some not so great test screenings. So originally the film was probably priced at like something like 70 million, but due to the reshoots, that's what made it go up to 90 million. So with 90 million as your production cost and 45 million as marketing expense, you have a general investment that amounts to $135 million. And the film would basically need to break even at least $405 million. So basically $400 million for this to be profitable. And clearly that's not going to be the case. Because what makes this series stand out from other action franchises outside of just general popularity, I think that the key ingredients are rather absent here, at least by just the marketing for it. You have two things that really make the John Wick movies more than the sum of their parts, because the films are very, very cookie cutter. I mean, they're just excuses to do stunts and choreography. A lot of the story elements that take place aren't necessarily that important, and that's why it's actually fairly easy to get into each movie. There's not a whole lot of information that needs to be taken with you. It's not like you're getting into like a James Bond movie or a Mission Impossible type of deal. It's very, very, very easy to understand what's happening in the John Wick world. But the two things that make these films work is the thing I've just mentioned, is the choreography, and Keanu Reeves, who has become the selling point in seeking out this series. So much so, when you strip those elements away, all you're left with now is just the sum of its parts, which is to say that Ballerina just looks like any generic action flick. There's nothing defining about it, and that's a lot of why I didn't see a lot of interest for it personally, and just my own personal viewing, I had no interest to see it. And clearly it was also the results. So like, if it ain't Keanu Reeves, they're not really going to show up, and without him, you're just left with something very ordinary and less interesting. So that's what makes the John Wick series work. It's not because they have a rich universe, and I know they're trying to expand it purely because they don't have anything left as a company, Lionsgate. We're actually going to get more into Lionsgate in a little bit, but this just isn't the way to do it. It's not. I wouldn't be surprised if they canceled the other planned spin-offs after this, because I mean, I could see this being a loss for them, especially going into this month. We have other releases like How to Train Your Dragon, Elio. I think this is just gonna be having a big drop off the next weekend, if you ask me. So. All right, let's revisit a old friend of ours. If you've been keeping up with the news roundups, let's revisit the whole thing going on with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. We haven't talked about it a lot on this channel just because there wasn't a whole lot of significance that had taken place recently. It's just a lot of just back and forth, still saying things here and there. And it looks like now there has been a major development because according to Variety, Blake Lively has reportedly withdrawn her claims against Justin Baldoni that described her quote-unquote emotional distress working with him. Now, according to Deadline, those reported withdrawals are not squarely of Lively's decision. It's not that she actually is just wanting to do this for the obvious reasons, which is the fact that they're just not true. She's doing this. She was doing that in the attempt to try to not disclose any medical or mental records to the other party, because they were Baldoni's lawyers were actually requesting for files from her medical and mental records, and within that exchange, they have a right to at least request those documents. And instead of, presenting those documents, if you're actually innocent, you probably would do that sort of thing. Because what else? You don't have anything to hide, so whatever. Instead of doing that, she decides to withdraw these specific claims in hopes that this little matter will just go away. And the court ruled, according to the Hollywood Reporter, that Blake Lively cannot refile her claims. So these dismissals are now permanent. So these claims are completely now withdrawn, even though her own rationale was to just piecemeal it. Just be like, I'm going to take these away for a little bit, and when it's best for me, I'm just going to put them right back in. That doesn't work that way. So yeah, so it's pretty clear at this point who is a liar and who will do whatever they can to conceal the truth. From what I've read, it's just more of the same, and like she was trying to have it both ways. And as someone familiar with the situation kind of laid out, according to the Deadline article, you can't necessarily do that. So yeah, it is, people like her, I think, are just pathetic, and I'm really surprised that this trial is even having to wait for so long. I think that you can squash this so it's so apparent, at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if she withdrawed her proposal for trial, or, withdrawed the case at some point, because it is just becoming extremely clear, who is the right here and who is wrong here. And, it's just pretty apparent at this point, if you ask me. So. Okay, as I mentioned when talking about Ballerina, we were going to talk about Lionsgate. So Lionsgate, as you guys know, if you have been following some of the news relating the Saw series, they were having some troubles with figuring out the next installment because, Lionsgate has, now according to Deadline, they actually own roughly 50% of the ownership stake, and they have co-ownership rights with Twisted Pictures, who owned the other 50%. And they were trying to figure out a way to make another movie. And as we kind of detailed there were some issues, not in the writer's room. It was more to do in the producers. So it was more to do with just butting of heads. And according to the Hollywood Reporter, what has now transpired is that Twisted Pictures, because here's the deal. They were trying to talk to other people that were not Lionsgate in finding ways to essentially sell off the series, but they can't do that legally because of Lionsgate's ownership. So they can't just go out and sell their series because they have to also contend with the 50% that is owned by Lionsgate. So what they've done is that they went to Blumhouse, and they actually are now going to absorb the 50% that Twisted Pictures originally held. So Blumhouse will now own 50% and probably a little bit more just based on what they probably have within their rights, within their ownership stake. And Blumhouse will basically be buying out the Saw franchise, or at least having a large ownership over the Saw franchise. Lionsgate's still involved. Like I said, they still have their 50%, but I'm pretty sure that Twisted Pictures has some larger authorities, and that's why probably they, legally speaking, can just go and do something like this without the consent with Lionsgate, and not just try to sell the whole franchise completely. So they basically sold their ass to another studio and letting them take the franchise over. So now, I guess they were talking last year, Blumhouse and Twisted Pictures, but those talks broke down earlier this year, probably due to just contentions with Lionsgate and stuff like that. So instead of finding ways around it, they just said, "Fuck it, you guys can just have our stake, and you guys can absorb the series itself." So yeah, Blumhouse may be owning the Saw series pretty soon here. So, I mean, if there's anything clear, it's that Twisted Pictures has no interest to work with Lionsgate, and they want to pursue other options. And clearly they have the confidence in Blumhouse because they're willing to hand over their own ownership stake to them. And that kind of leaves Lionsgate in a little awkward position. But yeah, I think it's a win for both because I think Blumhouse is a great home for the series. They usually, Saw films are done for dirt cheap, and Blumhouse typically operates on a lower budget scale. So I think that it's going to be a nice home for them. But it's definitely a loss for Lionsgate. I mean, that was kind of their horror base. I mean, they have stuff like The Strangers that they can hold on to, but the Saw series was like, that was their thing, So now they need to figure out their horror division, because, it's pretty much just boiling down to John Wick at this point. When it comes to Lionsgate, what they have is like special material, special IP. But yeah, so it will be potentially going to Blumhouse, and I feel like that's a really good fit for the series, if you ask me. So, speaking of horror film rights, let's get into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because according to Deadline, this hasn't been confirmed by other outlets, so I'm just going by Deadline's report. Apparently, a lot of studios are currently in discussions and potential negotiations to gain the rights to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. Some of those names include Neon, A24, Netflix, and Monkey Paw Productions, so Jordan Peele's company, aka Universal Pictures, basically. So there are 3 pitches from the specific companies. So Monkey Paw Productions hasn't laid out any type of pitches. I assuming it's probably a feature pitch. But according to Deadline, Netflix is setting up a feature film pitch, and with Roy Lee potentially producing. No director attached to that. There's a television's pitch being set up by A24 with Roy Lee once again, and Glenn Powell, the actor Glenn Powell, potentially producing with J.T. Molnar, the guy who did Strange Darling, I think, last year, which was a critical darling, if you get my understanding there. I think it was. Anyway, it was a funny play on words. But anyways, it seems like he might potentially helm the project, at least by just the name and what he does. Like, just judging by the fact that he's mostly a filmmaker, I'm just thinking he's probably potentially going to helm the thing. And then at Neon, they're also doing a feature pitch. And this one, they're going to have Oz Perkins, the guy who did Long Legs and The Monkey. He'll be acting as a producer and a co-writer with Brian Bertino, the guy who gave us The Strangers, potentially helming the project. So, as of right now, there are no firm confirmations. There's no setups, no validity to any of these proposals. It's all just pitches and discussions right now. I think that for what the future is in terms of the theatrical experience, it doesn't surprise me that there's a large desire for these companies to seek out notable IPs within the horror genre, specifically slashers. I mean, slashers are the quintessential cheap flick, which is to say that there's no real money that needs to be spent to create these types of movies, and it's also the intention largely in creating such films. I mean, they're grindhouse type movies, and with the right IP, I mean, there's great potential to maintain that kind of spirit, And Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that spirit being like making it for cheap and not making such a financial gamble. Like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is prime for that. It always has been a grindhouse type of series. So it doesn't really shock me that, given the current interests of audiences today and what's making larger profits these days, I'm not surprised that a lot of studios are wanting to jump in on this. So I think of the proposed companies that are in the name pool, I'd honestly like it to go to Neon, because I actually think it would be, firstly, a good home for them, because I just don't see these other companies willing to give it the spirit that this franchise has. Because, I mean, at least for my money anyway, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like my favorite of the slashers, because it actually tries to act like a film, not just like a random bits of just gore and blood and shit. It actually tries to do has some level of consistency, has some kind of frame of structure, and is like legitimately scary, But I just don't see A24 doing that. I just think that Neon wouldn't have as many restrictions. So hopefully Neon snags it. I like the lineup too, personally. Just that Pacific feature pitch just sounds kind of neat to me. But we'll see. Definitely a good series to snag. So hopefully Neon takes it, because I feel like that they would do it the most justice, if you ask me. So. Alrighty, we got a couple of trailers to discuss here, and then we're going to call it a day, so let's get into it. So the first trailer we're going to discuss is the teaser for Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. So essentially, Knives Out 3. Daniel Craig is back, as well as Rian Johnson, who is writing and directing once again. This lineup of the cast this time around is Josh O'Connor, Glenn Close, Josh Brolin, Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, and Kerry Washington. This, of course, directed once again by Rian Johnson, guy who gave us the first two Knives Out movies, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, as well as Brick with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Very good film if you haven't seen it. This has a release date for December 12th, 2025 on Netflix. I've never understood the appeal for this series personally. I've always have noticed the same mechanics in how they frame their narratives. like just the mystery of how it's built, it seems so apparent to me. Like it's making the bad guy, or at least the person that is guilty, they make that person out to be so obvious, and then they try to throw you off the scent, and then later on they'll say, "Hey, it actually is who you thought all along." Like the idea of subtlety doesn't exactly register to these kinds of movies, which to me I think is a fundamental flaw when representing a supposed mystery. So it's not really for me personally. I know that a lot of people like it, but I'm not particularly one of them. I don't hate it. It's not really a major. I just don't see the major appeal, and I don't see a reason to really seek this one out either. So, another film that is going to Netflix is Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. The first teaser has dropped, and this is being written and directed by Guillermo del Toro. Of course, you guys know him for films such as Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy, The Shape of Water, and most recently, his take on Pinocchio, which I thought was very good. This is starring Oscar Isaac, Mia Goth, Jacob Elordi, and Christoph Waltz. And this has a release date of November 2025 on Netflix. No specific date listed yet, which I find interesting, but I guess it's just, generally it's coming out in November. I'm mostly cold on this, to be honest. I mean, don't get me wrong, like I'm interested. I like the filmmaker that's attached to it. I mean, I don't remember loving Pan's Labyrinth, but I remember liking it enough. I remember really enjoying his take on Pinocchio. Um, I don't know. I doubt to be perfectly honest, I doubt I'll even seek this out. It just doesn't have like a large distinction outside of just the style and aesthetic that Del Toro brings to his movies. I just don't feel like that there's a lot there to really draw me into this world, you know. Um, like I don't know, it doesn't really do much for me. Maybe it's just the marketing. Maybe it's just that trailer. Um, but I don't know. It just doesn't really seem to register for me. Um, kind of neat. At Frankenstein. Under the direction of like Guillermo del Toro is definitely an interesting prospect. But by what I just saw in the trailer, it just doesn't really do much for me personally. So, but we'll see. Hopefully, it's just the trailer. But we'll just have to wait and see. And finally, we have the official trailer for a film called A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. This is starring Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie, and this is being directed by Konada, who directed films such as Columbus, which I love, and After Yang, which I also really enjoyed. This has a release date for September 19th, 2025, and I was really looking forward to this because I really think this guy is very, very talented. I think that Columbus is very, very good. After Yang is also really great as well, but I think Columbus is really, really, really great. So I was really looking forward to what he would do next. And I will say this, I think that it's the imaginative imagery is kind of a neat visual gimmick. But it's really disappointing given what I'm seeing here, because it's all surface level. And by the frame of how Konada works, I mean, he's not a filmmaker of like depth in terms of his writing, but he's a filmmaker in depth in terms of his aura, in terms of how he portrays events. And, I got that sense of weight absolutely when watching Columbus, and that sense of intrigue when watching After Yang. He's a filmmaker of aura, and I really appreciate directors like that, those who kind of rest within a meditative or type of, very interpretive type of a quiet nature. This is what I would say a studio film. Like in the same of like Darren Aronofsky directing the Caught Stealing. This is kind of like Konada's studio, or sorry, my mic, the studio film. And I'm not particularly crazy about that. I wanted something a little bit different from him. I really, really wanted something different. Um, it kind of has some charm. Like I can tell that there's a fair spirit just by general craftsmanship. It seems like there's a fair spirit there. But this idea of like, of just romance, basically, like the imagery is just that phrase, sharing your life with one another. That's essentially what the visuals amount to. And it's not anything more than that. It's not achieving a greater sense of depth or, frankly, creativity. And I've seen that in his other work, and it's just not registering here. So I'm just a bit disappointed. I was expecting a lot more from him, and expecting a lot more from this, and it just falls in line with the spirit of a lot of indie filmmakers, where they register and then they go off and do bigger things, and they kind of leave that part of themselves, that artistic side of themselves, behind. Because this isn't the Konada that I know of. This is the smell of corporate, studio, regular, type of filmmaking, mainstream type of sensibilities. Not really what I'm seeking when I visit Konada's work, or think of Konada's work. But yeah, those are my thoughts for this week, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying your summers. Everyone just seems like they're just finally entering their summer season. So hopefully, you guys this summer are going off to a good start. And you guys let me know your thoughts on all these topics in the comment section below. Your thoughts on Ballerina's box office, Blake Lively and her bullshit. Or if you don't think so, let me know. The Saw franchise going a different way. Texas Chainsaw Massacre looking for another company. Knives Out 3, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, A Big Bold Beautiful Journey. Let me know all your thoughts on all these things in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.